All right, today we are cracking open the mind of an absolute titan of competition. And we're not just talking about chess moves, we're going way deeper to uncover a blueprint for total dominance, a philosophy that was forged in the fire of some serious psychological warfare. Yeah, we're talking about the Kasparov Code.
The year is 1985. Garry Kasparov, just 22 years old, is the challenger, and he's up against world champion Anatoly Karpov. Now, this isn't just any match, it's the rematch, and it's famously brutal, incredibly political, and just psychologically draining. This was never just about a series of chess games. No way. This was full-on psychological warfare fought on that 64-square battlefield, with the entire weight of the Soviet political machine basically bearing down on this one young guy. So it was right there, inside that insane pressure cooker, that a legendary philosophy was born. And look, this wasn't just about winning one match. This single moment, it was going to define the entire path of Kasparov's career. And honestly, it would fundamentally change how we even think about competitive strategy, period.
Kasparov had this massive realization, a real light bulb moment. He understood that his genius, his incredible tactical mind, it wasn't going to be enough. Not this time. See, Karpov was the establishment's guy, a master at just slowly grinding his opponents into dust. Kasparov figured out that the winner of this match wouldn't be the one who could just take the pressure. No, it would be the player who could control it, who could weaponize it, and then turn it right back on his opponent.
And that led to this, just a brilliant strategic pivot. He fully committed to this idea, let's call it the inversion of pressure. Think about it. Instead of just soaking up all that stress, he decided, no, I'm going to be the source of the stress. He would deliberately push the game into the most complicated, messy, chaotic situations he could create. The goal? To swap out that emotional drain of being stressed with this focused, relentless wave of his own mental energy. And it was all designed for one single purpose, to make his opponent crack under the weight of 1,000 impossible decisions.
So this commitment, right, forged in the heat of that 1985 showdown, that was the beginning of everything. It was the genesis of his entire philosophy for competition, for achievement. This was the birth of what we're calling the Kasparov Code. And it's so much more than just a strategy. It's a complete operating system for turning raw pressure into surgical precision.
Okay, but to really get this code, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to understand the man and the machine that practically forged him. Because, this kind of mindset doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was literally hammered into shape by some serious political and institutional pressure.
I mean, look, Kasparov was a classic prodigy. He had insane talent and a work ethic that was just off the charts. But that's not exactly unique at the very top level, right? What really truly set him apart was his fight against the establishment. He was basically an outcast, politically sidelined by the super-powerful Soviet chess machine. They openly preferred his rival, Anatoly Karpov, who was seen as compliant and safe. Kasparov, he was the rebel, the outsider who just didn't fit their mold. And here's the key takeaway. All that external pressure, that feeling of being the lone wolf, fighting the whole system, it didn't break him. In fact, it became the fuel for his innovation. He knew, deep down, he couldn't beat the system by playing their game. So he had to create a new one. He had to be better, not just a little better, undeniably, systematically better in every single way.
And that necessity, it forced him to innovate like nobody had before. He became one of the very first to systematically use early computer databases for analysis, always hunting for tiny advantages the old guard would just completely miss. He also broke with tradition by building his own training teams, even bringing in non-Soviet thinkers for fresh ideas, to get away from all that institutional groupthink. He basically learned how to create his own pressure to keep his focus razor sharp.
So, how did all of this come together to create his core philosophy? Okay, this is where we really start to decode the mindset that powered his legendary run. Let's get right to it. What exactly is the Kasparov Code? Well, at its very heart, the Kasparov Code is a systematic belief. It's this deep conviction that real, lasting ambition isn't just about wanting something. It has to be fueled by a relentless, and I mean almost brutal, process of constantly critiquing yourself. For Kasparov, a competition wasn't just about the win. It was a laboratory. It was the ultimate pressure test for your own internal systems, a way to find every single flaw and then systematically get rid of it.
And we can actually break this code down into 3 main pillars. First up is the Proactive Escalation Mandate. That means always choosing the most ambitious, most complex path you can just to completely overwhelm your opponent's ability to think clearly.
Second, there's the Flawless Preparation Doctrine. This is all about using technology and your team to gain an information advantage before the game even starts. And third, the Systemic Self-Critique Rule. This is a ruthless, brutally honest breakdown of every single decision you made so you can find and fix weaknesses right away.
And that right there, that just perfectly captures the core of his whole approach. This wasn't some passive, feel-good thing about self-improvement. No. This was an aggressive, weaponized philosophy. A system of thinking designed for one thing and one thing only, to find every single possible advantage and then apply maximum force to utterly crush an opponent's will to fight back.
But, a philosophy is just an idea if you don't have a system to actually execute it. So how did Kasparov turn this intense mindset into real concrete actions he could repeat over and over? Well, this is where we pop the hood and look at the engine of his dominance, the precision system.
He basically came at his opponents with this devastating two-pronged attack. On the one hand, you had his mental weapon, what he called Data-Driven Positional Mastery. So he'd use these early computer databases to dig up shocking opening novelties. These were brand new moves at the start of the game that literally no one had ever seen before. I mean, imagine training for a marathon and on race day the entire course is different. That's what he was doing. The goal was instant information superiority. He'd force his opponents to solve a brand new, super complex problem with the clock ticking down. Then on the other hand, you had the physical weapon, a sustained intensity protocol. Kasparov was one of the first guys in an intellectual sport to treat his body like a high-performance machine. He trained physically, intensely, all to make sure fatigue was never a factor. His mind would be a razor-sharp weapon 5, 6, even 7 hours into a game, which is exactly when his opponent's mind was starting to crumble.
So when you put those two things together, what you get is this complete holistic system. It was just perfectly engineered to dump the maximum possible amount of pressure on his opponent right from the very first move. He'd hit you with some crazy new move you couldn't have possibly prepared for, and then he had the physical stamina to just wait you out while you burn through all your mental and physical energy trying to figure it out. It was just a suffocating, systematic assault.
And the results? Well, they kind of speak for themselves, don't they? The Kasparov Code wasn't just some abstract theory. It was a machine that produced one of the most dominant reigns in the history of, well, any sport. So yeah, let's take a second to really appreciate that legacy.
After he won that grueling match back in '85, Garry Kasparov became the undisputed, dominant world chess champion. And he stayed there for 15 years. I mean, just think about that. 15 years at the absolute top of such an incredibly demanding sport. It's staggering.
But honestly, his legacy is so much bigger than just that title. Kasparov completely changed the game for what it means to be a competitor in any high-stakes mental field. He's the one who proved that systematic, data-driven prep is just plain better than relying on raw talent or intuition. He made data analysis and technology a standard part of a field that used to be all about pure human creativity. And maybe the biggest thing? He's the one who established what we all know now, that peak physical fitness is absolutely essential for peak mental performance. It's not optional.
Okay, so all of this is fascinating history, but what does it mean for us? And that brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole explainer. How can we take the principles of this code and actually apply them to our own challenges? It's your turn at the board.
So if we had to boil it all down, what's the one ultimate lesson we can take away from Garry Kasparov's entire career? It's not really about chess, and it's not even just about winning. It's about something deeper. It's about completely reframing our relationship with challenge itself.
And this is it, right here. The big lesson from the Kasparov Code is that pressure isn't something you should try to avoid. It's a resource. In fact, it's the most valuable tool you have for defining, testing, and sharpening your own internal systems, whether that's in your job, your creative pursuits, or just your personal growth. The takeaway is simple. Don't run from pressure. Run towards it.
So here's your call to action, and it comes straight out of the Kasparov playbook. First, commit to that systemic self-critique rule. After you finish a big project or get through a tough week, don't just forget about it and move on. Do a ruthless audit of your decisions. What worked, what didn't, and the most important question, why? Second, be brutally honest with yourself about where you're weak, and then make a real systematic plan to fix it. And finally, stop waiting around for challenges to come to you. Go out and proactively find them. Intentionally put yourself in situations that are going to test your limits.
So let's just bring it all home. Garry Kasparov built his entire legacy on a profound truth, that real genius isn't just measured by talent, but by the ability to sustain your focus when things get tough. The Kasparov Code gave us all a systematic blueprint for how to turn that pressure into precision,
through a mastery of technology, and above all else, through relentless self-critique. Because if his career teaches us anything, it's this one immutable rule. Your systems only achieve flawless precision when they're tested under maximum load.